What's going on, guys?
What's good, family?
Hey, see who coming in. How's everything going, Coach? How you been
Man,
feeling?
man, all is well, bro. What's good with you, bro?
Man, I'm blessed. I can't complain about nothing. Nothing at all.
Yeah. That's a blessing, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But wanted to get everything started. Introduce yourself, Coach.
I'm Coach 67 Sports TV. Shout out to the amazing LDBC Lions Den boxing community.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Also, if you don't know, my name is Jared 11 Green on YouTube. Um, Also, shout out to the amazing LDBC. And we just wanted to start this YouTube channel just talking about football, just shooting the breeze, just uh, brothers just talking about football. Today we're going to talk about HBCU football. Few games happen, a lot of games that happen uh, past few days, um, especially in the SWAC. Coach, can you feel everybody in as far as um, how you feel about SWAC play, how which team did, who you was impressed with, who you wasn't impressed with, just on your insight on that.
All right, my insight on that. I was extremely impressed with J State. The J State FAMU game. I was looking for a competitive contest. However, J State just smashed FAMU. I was kind of shocked at that.
Me too.
J State is kind of the odds-on favorite to win the SWAC. And on the east side, J State, FAMU is like one of the contenders in the East to win the SWAC. So I expected a close competitive game, but J State just blew the doors off of FAMU, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of eye opening, But it seems as if Dion kind of has J State going in the right direction. I think the thing the traps that they're gonna have to watch and the pitfalls they're gonna have is just the kind of the focus, because I think that's the reason why they lost the Celebration Bowl. There was no way that they should have lost that game.
Yeah, the South Carolina State
Yeah, they
last
could have
year.
beat South Carolina State. It just kind of seemed like they just thought South Carolina State was going to lay down. And, with teams I've coached in the past, we've had the issue where, when you're the heavy favorite, you just assume, well, hey, we're just going to walk over this particular team. And, especially when the team is ready, prepared, and they're ready to go, like, you got to be ready to go, too. You just can't assume that they're just going to lay down for you and just give it to you. You got to go take it. And I think that's going to be the biggest issue that J State going to have this particular season is not having those letdown games, not having those trap games, just but being up and being ready and focused every week. Because even when they played Southern last year, I don't think that really, even though it's a big rivalry game, I don't think that was their best performance. And I think that the fact that it's enough of a rivalry game to where they didn't get too far behind and they just kind of pulled it out the fire at the end. In terms of Southern, because I'm a Southern University graduate alumni, SU. They played against Florida Memorial this weekend. You really can't gauge anything with that particular performance. It's not like we could tell if Jerron Sims going to be the next Melvin Williams, or if he going to be the next Leonard Tillery, Steve Wolf, or whoever. If you can't gauge that much from that particular game because it's pretty much an easy win, a cupcake opponent's first game of the year to kind of get your feet wet. So you really can't gauge anything by that particular game. I saw a lot of SWAC and MEA games this weekend. To be truthful, you know, I guess I'm kind of jaded from a coaching perspective because I see so many teams run spread offenses, so many teams run like 3-4 defenses. A lot of these teams don't have the personnel to run the offense, the defense they run. And, it's kind of like at points, it's like, I'm just aggravated seeing all these teams run spread offenses when they don't have the personnel to run the offense that they run. I saw North Carolina Central yesterday. I mean, saw a lot of Frank and Nick this
I was
weekend.
surprised by that.
Huh?
I was surprised by that. Like usually, A&T is the big brother of North Carolina Central, but North Carolina Central was ready to play this
Oh
year.
no, no,
They're like,
they came to play this weekend, and I mean, I think they were shocked by, how well they played. I mean, they came out and, I mean, they were ready to go for that particular game. So, I was shocked by that also.
yes, sir. And just picking back, if you don't know, Coach, 67 Sports TV is an actual coach. He just doesn't have that in his title, just because he actually coaches the youth, middle school, basketball and football. So he's competent regarding a lot of football, especially. And he's also a alumni of a graduate of Southern University in Louisiana. So, piggybacking what you were saying, the Southern Jags, they beat Florida Memorial 86-0. Florida Memorial, I think, is a Division 3 school, Division 2.
No, they're Division 2 school. I think they either they moved up or they're moving up. But I mean, the talent gap is a huge talent gap. I'm gonna be truthful. If you guys have an elite Baton Rouge High School team, I think they probably would have gave Florida Memorial good. I'm not trying to
Right.
disrespectful. I think Catholic High, maybe Scotlandville at their best, probably would have gave Florida Memorial a good game. I mean, they're a private school, they're a Christian university. So, I mean, it's a huge talent gap. And, my thing is, I mean, from a coaching standpoint, I had a basketball game I lost once, like 87-15. So,
Wow.
even when I was in middle school, my coach, may he rest in peace, but assistant coach, he was a big SU fan too, but he used to like want to score up on opposing teams. I was always a fan of, hey, let's clear the bench, let everybody play, let everybody get some good work, but not just try to rub it in opposing team's face. And I think after a certain point, it was obvious, like, hey, I don't know. There's one thing I could say about Florida Memorial. They had a lot of fight, but the talent gap was just so big. And Coach Dooley, I think he really was trying to make a statement, saying, hey, I might have came from Prairie View, but hey, Southern has arrived, and we just sending a message to the rest of the SWAC. But I think after a certain point, it was overkill. They were still throwing the ball. They were still aggressive on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm like, man, look, at this point, the game is over. Let's just save some of these points next week for when y'all play LSU because you might need them. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right. Yeah, I think I'm gonna be honest with you, Coach. It may be a complete slaughter.
Yeah,
Um.
but I'm not gonna lie. I watched LSU and Florida State last night,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna be honest. By SEC standards, uh, LSU has a great deal of talent. They have like 4 NFL caliber wide receivers, but their line is trash. Jaden Daniels, he's a very good quarterback. He's mobile, he's athletic, but I don't think he's that great of a pocket passer. And in terms of LSU's defense is trash. I'm not saying that's going to necessarily translate to Saturday's game, but I don't think it's going to be as just based on what I saw from Southern. When you really can't gauge anything by Florida Memorial, but last night's, I mean, especially the special teams aspect of it, LSU special teams is trash. It's like, hey, they muffed 2 punts. That's 2 possessions they lost, and in addition to that, Florida State blocked the field goal, and then they blocked the extra point that would have sent the game into overtime in a regulation. So LSU have they share issues also. Don't get me wrong. I know from a talent standpoint, Southern is playing up in competition, and seen some of the probably over the last 30 years, I've seen some of the best Southern teams ever, and I've seen some of the worst LSU teams in that same time frame, and even those worst LSU teams would have smacked the best Southern teams. But even with that being said, I don't think it's going to be as lopsided as people think. I'm not
So,
expecting to win Southern, but I was not impressed by LSU not
so
winning
you
Southern.
think Michon McCray will do? I'm not saying he'll go out and throw like 300 yards against this LSU defense, even though they're last lackluster compared to the talent they had following years. But you think he's gonna fare pretty well against this new LSU defense that's
Well,
not that good?
I think the thing about it is he seems like he's a good dual threat quarterback, but it's too early in the game for me to say he's going to be the next Eric Randall. He's going to be the next Quincy Richard. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we don't know if he's going to be, I don't know, the next Troy Williams or whoever. I mean, it's too early to tell, you know. But he seemed like he's a good runner. He seems like he's a decent pocket passer. But like I say, the caliber competition, because even Glenn the Bubble McDaniels, he was the starter last year. He's the third string quarterback now. He came in the starter second half, and the first pass he dropped the dime, but the receiver dropped it. Then eventually he threw a long touchdown pass. He scrambled and he looked good also. So with that caliber opposition, you really can't tell anything. But I
Right.
mean, but the point I'm trying to make is LSU was extremely unimpressive last night. I mean, don't get me wrong, I knew it was the first game of the season. From a tackling standpoint, they were trash. They missed a lot of tackles. They really didn't generate no pressure on Florida State. And I know Florida State quarterback Travis, can't think his last name. He's an exceptional quarterback. But even with that being said, he looked like the second coming of Charlie Ward last night. I mean, this guy he lit LSU's defense up. So LSU defense was trash.
Yeah, my Tar
LSU,
Heels are very familiar with Travis. We couldn't stop him when we played him last year, so I'm definitely familiar with his game. You definitely have to have a spy for him or a defensive planning for him to make him stay in the box.
but like Brian Kelly said, there were like a few occasions where he had two or three defenders easy, had him dead to rights, and he should have got sacked. And he was like Houdini. He just got out of it, and he turned around and take a, a play that should have been a 15-yard loss, and he might only lose 5 yards. So he took a play that might have been a 5-yard loss, and he turned it to like a 10-yard, 15-yard gain, maybe even bigger than that. So it were a few situations where he just made LSU defense just look like putrid. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, so I still think LSU is going to win, but I think Southern is going to give them a better fight than we think. I think the one thing that kind of concerns me about Southern is the fact that you have so many new starters. You only have 6 returning starters from last year, and even Jerron Sims. He was essentially hurt the entire year. I'm used to Ben being the bell cow for Southern. I know he didn't play like the last 2 games of the season or whatever season. They really wanted to go with Sims, but Sims was the starting running back. But he only played like he only started 1 game and he played in a handful of games. So really, you have a bunch of new starters. You only have 6 returning starters for Southern. So you know, I mean, it was good that they got their feet wet this past weekend, but it's gonna be an entirely different story coming weekend against LSU.
And we talked about it offline. And I'm gonna talk about this last thing I'm gonna say about Southern. We're gonna move on to another SWAC team. Um, Jordan Lewis. Uh, last think was it last year? He was FCS sack leader. He was the winner of the Buck Buchanan award, which is like the
Yeah.
Lombardi Trophy for the FCS for most sacks, best defensive lineman. Uh, Jordan Lewis is a Jaguars. You could say outside linebacker, defensive end type, but he's only 6'3", 215 at heaviest 220. But this he's wiry, strong for his size, and he can get around the corner. What I was surprised about when I was watching Southern, he was he didn't have his hand in the dirt, and I didn't really see that impact. Um, Even though they was playing a Division II school, I didn't see him like we saw him last year. So going into when they start playing the SWAC teams, how will this affect Southern defensive wise?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna be truthful. When they made a big deal about them moving him because essentially the way Southern ran their defense, it's like a hybrid 3-3 stack 4-2-5. And I don't know if you remember the old Chargers defense with Sean Merriman. They
Yeah.
ran like they really was a 3-4 defense, but it was like 4-3 personnel, and Merriman would be on the inner line of scrimmage. So that's really the way Southern ran their defense. He had his hand in the dirt oftentimes last year, but in all actuality, he's really not a 4-3 defensive end. He's more of a 3-4 outside linebacker. And all his best pass rushes, when he generated the most pressure, it either came off a blitz or him actually being in the 2-point stance and just coming off the edge. So essentially, them moving him, it was just a common sense move. I really don't see it really impacting his game whatsoever. The thing I didn't like, I mean, he's clearly their best pass rusher. I feel like too often last year when they played against certain teams, they were dropping me in coverage just to kind of disguise what they were doing defensively. But to me, it's like he's by far your best pass rusher. So why put him in coverage at all? I mean, his coverage
Yes.
skills, they're not great anyway. I mean, he's decent in coverage, but he's an exceptional pass rusher. So he should always rush the pass as far as I'm concerned. And I think the thing with the matchup this week against LSU has like four potential NFL wide receivers, but the offensive line is trash. So I think uh they should spy Jaden Daniels, and they should just let Jordan Lewis get after him as much as possible. I would load up the box if I was Dooley, but I mean I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna play conservative. I don't know if they get aggressive defensively. Just kind of remains to be seen.
Okay. All right. Um, Bethune Cookman, Miami. Bethune Cookman got smashed 70 to
Yeah,
13. But I will say this: former Jackson State Tiger Jalen Jones, even though he threw an interception, he looked great. I was very impressed with Jalen Jones. Um, I'm not saying they'll do great in the SWAC because didn't they move from the MEAC to the SWAC now?
they
Bethune
they, they,
Cookman.
they did also, and I'm gonna be honest. I think Bethune Cookman. I mean, they're playing against Florida. Like I said, when you have these FCS teams are 0-1 teams playing against 1A FBS teams. When it's hard to evaluate those type of games because I hate to throw it to Southern again, but even when they played against Georgia years back, because I remember Leonard Floyd, that was like his junior senior year before he ended up going to the NFL. He plays for the Rams now. Uh, Southern played exceptionally well in that game, and you would think based on that performance, well, hey, they should win the SWAC. But they didn't even win the
Right.
SWAC. So you can't gauge, what you're gonna do during the course of the season by those type of games. And I'm gonna be truthful. I think under the circumstances, Bethune Cookman did well, but you playing against the youth. You know what I'm saying? So University of Miami, it's just a huge talent gap. I think they did okay. For them to hang up 70, it shows you the talent difference.
Yeah, one thing I always say, because you will hear people that don't know the history of the HBCU football or just why there's a talent gap. Um, the Devontae, I heard a interview with Devontae Kincaid, former Grambling
Grambling quarterback,
state
yeah.
quarterback. Yeah, he was a quarterback of Ole Miss. He was one of the top one of the top quarterbacks in the country, and he committed to Ole Miss, ended up transferring to Grambling State, and he ended up balling uh, at Grambling State for Broderick Fobbs when
Yeah,
he was coach
he
at that
gave he
time.
gave some hits. Yeah.
Yeah, and he would say, he did an interview and he said that the difference of talent. He said that the skill positions could uh, could ball as far as in Division 1 or Power 5 schools, but he said the only difference of talent is the defensive line and offensive line.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. In the trenches up front, that's where the biggest talent gap is. And I'm gonna be truthful. In Pete Richardson's era, like they had guys that were like literally at LSU, and they were buried on the depth chart, and they would transfer to Southern, and they would literally walk right into the lineup, and they would become first team All SWAC, and they would become All Americans. And some of those same guys, I think, you know, for political reasons, I'm gonna be truthful. Me personally, just talking to like a lot of guys that went to Southern. I know, a lot of my friends were in my department at Southern that played ball, and I had friends that also. I mean, even if you look in just in the LDBC, somebody like Jay Good or whatever the case may be, they'll tell you those guys probably should have started at some of these bigger schools, but they might have got in trouble or whatever the case may be, and they transferred over to some of the smaller schools. In the day and time, the landscape is so much different. That's why I was a huge proponent of Coach Prime going to J State, because like when I was in school, like in the late '90s, you would have guys that would be like exceptional talents in high school, and they would go to LSU if they felt like they were getting a unfair shake from a political standpoint. They were better on the depth chart, and they felt like they should be starters. They would just transfer to Southern, and they would walk right into the starting lineup, and they would become NFL prospects. But in recent years, guys, they don't want to transfer to these FCS schools. You would have guys that would transfer. Let's say, for example, there was this guy from St. James High School. His name was Lowell Narcisse. He was a quarterback at LSU, and instead of him transferring to Southern or even some of the other schools, he just transferred to another FBS school. So a lot of these guys, until the merger of Coach Prime to J State, they would just transfer from one big school to another big school. They would just sit out their year. Whereas in years past, they would sit out a year. They would just walk right into the starting lineup, and they were NFL prospects all of a sudden. So the talent gap is huge, especially up front on both sides of the ball. And that's probably where in fact that was one year where when Southern played against Georgia, it kind of helped them because Southern had an offensive line. Those guys, they started a lot of games together. So that's why Southern really did getting, they held their own against Georgia defensive line. But, when you play that much of a bigger team, depth also is an issue also. And, Southern hung them for the first half of that game. And then after a certain point, Dawson Oldham, teacher was like, well, he didn't want to risk any of his starters getting hurt. He pulled those guys, and Georgia just ran away with the game,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely, I agree with you. The talent gap is good. It doesn't mean the young men at the HBCUs can't ball. It's just they don't have the dogs backing them up.
Yeah, they
Like
don't.
you said, like for example, LSU, you have a 5-star starting, and you may have another 5-star behind them or a 4-star.
Yeah.
HBCUs don't have that, so don't get it twisted.
Don't have that luxury.
A lot of people get it twisted, like these young men, like they suck or the garbage. No, they just ain't got the dogs backing them up.
They don't. And in some instances, like I said, some of these guys they maybe could have went to a big a Power 5 school and been a star. I mean, starter, even a rotational guy. But in some instances, they'll rather come to a SWAC school and be a starter as opposed to going to a Power 5 and being a rotational guy. They got a lot of guys that probably over the years that would have been like maybe a backup running back at LSU, but they rather come to Southern and be a starter. You know what I'm saying? So you can't knock that. Especially when you want to play.
Yes, sir. And what I'm starting to, I don't know about you, but what I'm starting to see is a lot of the easy. I'm not saying all the 5-star talent, but starting to see a lot of Division uh, 1 talent going to these FCS programs. Like a lot of these young boys. Why do I have to compete with another 5-star, 4-star when I can just go to Southern and start?
Yeah. And like I say, I'm gonna be honest with you. Even though he's at a rival school in J State, I really think that has a lot to do with Coach Prime coming to J State and coming in and entering the SWAC. And I think that has made other SWAC teams and other SWAC coaches step their game up. And then in addition to that, the fact that he came to J State, now that you have Hugh Jackson and Grambling, it's a game change. In fact, in addition to that, I don't know if you remember Kevin Sumlin, used to be the head coach for the University of Houston and also at Texas A&M. It essentially, from what I'm understanding, it came down to him and Eric Dooley to be the Southern head coach. And the reason why they chose Dooley, because Dooley is from Pete Richardson, the dean of SWAC. He's from his coaching tree. And Coach Richardson, even though he's in the booth now, announcing games for Southern, he's still, he's revered, and from my understanding, he has, a little political pull, and he really pushed for Coach Dooley to be, the head coach. And then not only that, with Kevin Sumner, from what I'm understanding, many people, he would just use Southern as a stepping stone to go to another Power Five school to get another like big, big contract, big deal. Maybe if not, since he in the University of Houston, and them, maybe next year to try to go to Texas Tech or somewhere else. So they didn't want him just to use something as a stepping stone to get to, another Power Five school. So that's the reason why they went in the Coach Dooley direction. They felt it was a better long term investment. So.
Here's a good question I got for you, Coach. Is Jackson State really that good? Because I know it's the beginning of the season. I'm be honest. I don't see anybody in the SWAC giving them too many problems. I'm not saying they can't be beat, but for example, my Tar Heels um, secondary was getting torched by FAMU wide receivers. It was ridiculous. I was so upset, but FAMU got some dogs at wide receiver. Willie Simmons coached those boys up. Even um, when they couldn't suit up. What was it? 26 players.
Yeah.
26 players could not suit up, and FAMU still went
Yeah,
uh,
they did.
to you know to UNC and played very well, fairly well, even though like we just discussed the depth of the talent started to show later on in the game. FAMU played very well, uh, but when Jackson State played FAMU, it was like they might as well been playing Alabama or somebody.
Yeah, yeah.
It seemed like Jackson State had like we would say about the Power Five program. It seemed like Jackson State had the depth that FAMU could not um, compete with. So me and my brother was talking the other day. I'm glad we didn't play Jackson State instead of FAMU because they probably would have beat us.
Well, I'm gonna be truthful with the J State thing. Based on what I saw last year when they played against Southern, and even the other, yesterday. I think the thing with J State is I think the skill players are exceptional. They have, in my opinion, I think they have Power Five caliber skill players.
Right.
I think that kind of got me with J State is up front on both sides of the ball. Like they really, I think that's what the difference is. I think they have like regular SWAC, offensive and defensive linemen. I think that's where I think that kind of gave Southern. I mean, be truthful. I don't think they brought the A game when they came to AW Memphis Stadium last year. I think that's the reason why Southern probably led like, you know, probably maybe 4/5 of the game because Jay State didn't get that lead till like late in the fourth quarter, and then once Glenn Bubba McDaniels brought SU's offense back on the field, all that was like a left, and basically the game was over. But I feel people talked about how good, J State defense was and how good they were up front on both sides of the ball. I felt like that's what Southern really had to advance last year was O line and the D line. I felt like, especially the O line, I feel like Southern was really able to lean on J State's D line, and I think that's where they had the success at. So it seems as if you know there's a slight improvement on both sides of the ball, but I still think if I was a SWAT coach, I would really try to attack them up front on both sides of the ball. I think that's where the weakness lies. And from a skill player standpoint, I think J State has the skill players, but I think when they played against Carolina State in the Celebration Bowl, that wide receiver, I can't remember the kid's name. Tall, he was rangy. They were so used to just playing man-to-man coverage across the board against teams. Uh, when they really came up with the wide receiver that they would have to double, they just weren't accustomed to doing it. I think the
Mm.
fact that both of those games, they really embraced the A game against South Carolina State and against Southern. You know, even really against Prairie View, if you watch the SWAC championship game closely, Prairie View had a lot of success just running the ball against J State. So I think J State is beatable, but I think, like I was telling you earlier, I think if they are focused week in and week out and having the trap, I really think they could run the table at Southern. I mean, I think they could run the table in the SWAC, but I'm gonna be true. It's hard to stay up like week in and week out. I don't care what sport it is, whether it's college football, whether it's boxing. Even if you think of like the best boxer, whatever, they lose to guys that they shouldn't lose to because
Yeah.
it's hard to get up like fight after fight. And even in the SWAC, I think it's gonna be hard for J State to get up week in and week out. And a lot of people don't give J State their best shot because I'm like, hey, everybody has all praise for J State. They're viewed in such high, lofty regards. So let's try to knock them off. So honestly and truthfully, I don't SWAC. I think they're gonna, whether they lose to Grambling or Prairie View or Southern or whoever, I think at some point they're gonna slip on banana peel and they're gonna lose. That's just my personal opinion.
I disagree with you, Coach. I don't see, and it's football. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. You know that better than me. You being an actual coach. But as far as talent wise, somebody who can compete with the talent up and down roster wise, I just don't see it. I just need to be shown because Shador Sanders was throwing that ball um, like he was I mean, he was amazing. They defense. What's the number 57's name?
Can't think of that
That
kid's name. He played well.
yes, I think he was a transfer from Tennessee.
Yeah.
They could not block him at all. Nobody on that line could block him. He was getting penetration at will. Um, the number one athlete that Coach Prime recruited,
Travis Hunter.
Travis Hunter. He had almost multiple interceptions in that game. He couldn't get one, but
He is a Coach Prime clone. When
yeah.
Prime was in the day, Travis Hunter reminds me of that. And I don't mean to cut you off, bro, but I'm gonna be
No, you good.
I don't think it's so much. I think even if you look at last year, like from a talent standpoint in the SWAC, J State had head and shoulders above everyone else. The talent. I don't think the talent was anything in question. And I'm gonna be truthful, even on the O line and D line, I see some improvement. But I think the thing about it is the mindset is the thing I think that's gonna allow maybe a Prairie View or a Southern or Grambling or whoever to beat them. Is because when you're that good, and when you're that good, you bound to have a letdown game. And even against South Carolina State, there's no way, bro, no way they should have lost that game. They should have smacked South Carolina State. And even when they came to A.W. Mumford Stadium that night, like I said, I know it's a rivalry game, but I they didn't bring their best game when they played Southern, and I think that's the reason why they were so happy. Like, hey, we really should have lost this game, but we won. I think that's why they were so elated after the game, and I'm not gonna lie, from a coaching standpoint, that was probably the best SWAC game I saw the entire season last year. It was just unfortunate that they planted the flag at at the 50-yard line, and it was a whole melee, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like. We don't need no negative attention or negative light on the SWAC. It was such a great game, such a great atmosphere. I'm not gonna lie, even the J State fans, we talk trash back and forth to each other, but it was all love, you know what I'm saying? And for the game to end that way, it was like, oh my goodness, it's like it was a little bit of a damper, But I think, the fact that they felt like they really probably should have lost that game, I think that's why they were so elated and so excited after that game. So I the talent isn't in question. I mean, the question is the talent is unquestionable. I think being able to get up week in and week out, because even as good as some Southern teams were in the late 90s, I'm gonna be truthful. Pete had guys that were transferring from LSU like left and right. I mean, they had some teams that really, were exceptional. They had good offensive and defensive line. You had good skill players like guys like, Mike Hayes, Jermaine Sharp, Nemesis Bates. But the thing about it was just getting up week in and week out, because I remember the last, like, not just good team Southern, I'm talking about the last excellent team Southern had in 03. I remember I was in class, and all during that week, Pete Richardson, he predicted it. He was like, they're not focused in practice, they're not doing this, they're not doing that, blah, 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 blah. And sure enough, guess what? When Alcorn came to town that week, Don DC Curry was the starting quarterback. Southern lost 28-24. So the point I'm trying to make, bro, is the fact that Shea State has the talent. I think just getting up just week in and week out, that's going to be the challenge, Because
I agree. I
yeah,
agree, but I'm still, because Corey Fields at South Carolina State wasn't that impressive to me at all. But he can get the ball to Shaquan Davis. That's the wide receiver you were talking about. He's
yeah, yeah,
6'5",
yeah,
he can go get it. He scored
yeah. He
against
high that ball a lot. Yeah, he did.
yeah, he scored against Central Florida, but even though they lost 56-10.
Yeah,
I didn't see anybody, even though Coach Prime, even last year, he recruited pretty good, but there was nobody on that roster that could cover Shaquan Davis last year. Nobody. Offensive line was the weakest point of their team. Uh, Nobody on that offensive line could block Jared Kursky, defensive lineman from South Carolina State. He was getting back there at will. Well, I guess what I'm saying is there's now this year there are dogs on the roster. There's somebody at cornerback that can uh put up irritate Shaquan Davis. Even though he's 6'5" monster, he can catch the ball at high point. But Travis Hunter is there waiting, licking his chops for
yeah,
Corey
yeah,
Fields, because he's not that accurate at all. There's some offensive linemen Coach Prime recruited this year that could. I'm not saying a whole 60-minute ball game they can hold Jared Kursky, but they can do enough to drive the ball up and down the field and do what they got to do.
yeah.
So I hear what you're saying, but I feel like this year they have the pieces put in place to maybe run the table. But like you said, the SWAC is funny. The team that you
It is. It is.
think is dominant may lay an egg to a Southern or Prairie View A&M. They got this quarterback from Duncanville, number 14. He's an athlete. I'm not saying he's
Yeah,
the most accurate, but the boy can ball.
yeah,
He can
yeah,
ball.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's gonna be
and I
interesting.
think,
Go ahead.
yeah, and I think that's my only thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know they don't have as many roster holes this year as they did last year. Like you said, the O line is improved, the D line is improved. They're bringing in Travis Hunter as a 5-star. I think that's accurate. And I mean, I'm gonna be truthful. I know I agree with everything you're saying, and you make some valid points. I think it's the thing about it. It's not so much like I said, the fact that the talent is in question. It's just gonna be kind of hard just to get up week in and week out. You got, Grambling this week. You got Southern that week. You got Prairie View. You got Alcorn. I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful toward like the bottom of the SWAC teams, but you might not necessarily have to worry about the Mississippi Valleys or the Texas Southerns or whoever the case may be. But those top teams week in and week out, I think it's gonna it's gonna be hard for them to get up for them every week, because like I said, even with South Carolina State, I mean, you make some valid points, and I agree with you. But even with that being said, I still don't think they should have lost that game. And even with Shador, he played better yesterday. But even that's one thing I noticed in that South Carolina State game and against Southern, you know, he's you know you hate to compare a child to their parent, but he's nowhere near the athlete Coach Prime was in his heyday. And from a quarterbacking perspective, I think he's fundamentally sound, but and he played much better yesterday than he did the entire season last year. But I think the thing last year was, he was just getting the ball out of space to the athletes, and I think that was really the kind of basis of the offense. Because I'm gonna be truthful, I watch a lot of teams run spread, and all spreads aren't created equal. But I felt like J State spread was just kind of vanilla to me last year, and it's like, bro, like, I don't have an entire spread package with my team because it's middle school, but I felt like they were like real predictable, real vanilla, but teams couldn't
Right.
stop them because they had such skilled players, and so it's gonna kind of be interesting to see how things kind of play out, and if you have those kind of athletes, I'm not saying you need to have a real complex spread, but it seems as if he kind of added a little bit more to their offense.
Yeah, he recruited well. The wide receivers, no disrespect to them young men who played last year. They're not the athletes that he got on the squad this year at all. So you referring to the spread, I think they can do it more efficiently this year. Throw the ball at the spread formation.
Yeah, and I don't mean to cut you off, bro. And I know, like, I remember when that COVID season, after COVID,
Hmm.
when he played that spring, you know, I remember he said, like, hey, he's not trying to show a whole lot, going into the last season. He just kind of wanted to keep it vanilla. But it seemed like when they transitioned from, the previous spring to this past fall, it seemed like they didn't add like a whole lot to their offense. It just was like real basic to me, and I'm like, whoa, like I mean, I know you have a lot of like real talented skill players, but I felt like he needs to show a little bit more on the offensive side. But it seems as if they're putting everything together, especially with the roster addition that they had, with this recruiting class.
All right. I'm gonna put you on the spot, coach. Uh, I know we were talking about Jackson State, how dominant they are. Who do you see coming out on top in the SWAC? Or we,
All right,
I can put it to you like this: who do you see next to Jackson State gonna give Jackson
all
State a
right.
run for their money?
I'm gonna lay it out. J State is in the SWAC East. I'm gonna be honest with you. In the SWAC East, it's not as tough as the SWAC West. So I see them running the table in the SWAC East. In terms of the SWAC West, I think it's harder, you know, and I think whoever come out the SWAC West, is gonna kind of be, the team that's really gonna give, J State the run for their money. But I'm gonna just lay it out on the table, and I'm not trying to be a homer, but I think Southern is gonna come out the West. I think J State is gonna come out the East. I think during the regular season, I think J State is gonna beat Southern head to head. But I think in the championship game, I think it's going to be a close game. Like I said, I don't want to sound like a homer, but I think Southern is going to win the SWAC. But from a talent standpoint, truthfully speaking, I think J State is head and shoulders above every other team in the SWAC. But I think to me, that's the thing that they have to show me that they could be up week in and week out. And even somebody like Travis Hunter, how often is he going to use him on the offensive side of the ball? How often I know he's a stalwart on the defensive side. How often is he going to use him on the offensive side of the ball? Because especially if they're struggling offensively, are they going to put him on the offensive side of the ball more often to give him a shot in the own way Coach Prime would when he played for the Cowboys? What type of package are they going to have for him? So
Right.
these are a lot of questions that I have. I think J State is going to do well. And my thing is, when they play against, I don't know the exact schedule, but if they play against a bigger team, because I remember last year, they played against ULM. They should have won that game. Whenever they get opportunity to play against a bigger team, how they going, whether it's this year or down the line, how they going to do when they play against these,
I don't
you
think
know.
they play. I don't think they play against a bigger school this year. They're playing. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna pull up the schedule.
And I don't mean to cut you off. That's one thing I'm gonna be honest. Because I remember my dad, and he rest in peace, he used to tell me this all the time. Because I remember at one year this, uh, this addition that Southern put on to the stadium, to AW Memphis Stadium years ago, and they needed
Right.
like a half a mil to complete that renovation, and to get the money. This is gonna be the first time they played against LSU in football, and we was like, well, here they need a half a million. They could play LSU and get that money. And I'm like, do you think they should play that game? And he was like, son, the money is good, but he said it's not gonna be worth the boat whooping you're gonna take and return to get it. So he was like, I'm gonna play it. He was always a proponent of like SWAC and MEAC schools playing each other. And I'm not gonna lie, outside of like the real like diehard SWAC rivals like T State, Grambling, Prairie View, Alcorn, outside of those games, for the non-conference games, I was always a proponent of SWAC teams playing against MEAC teams or vice versa. I used to like when Southern played against the Howards, the Hamptons, the North Carolina A&Ts, the South Carolina State, because going to it's the Celebration Bowl now, but going to the Heritage Bowl back in the days when they played against South Carolina State, even when they played against Howard or Hampton, I used to love those games. So I would be more. I mean, don't get me wrong. You want the money, the pity that it comes with playing against the LSU, and you want the notoriety and the publicity, especially since Coach Prime is coming to J State. But I'm gonna be truthful. I'm more of a proponent of playing, in those classics, against a team like a Howard, Hampton, or South Carolina State. I'm more of a proponent of that as opposed to playing against the LSU, the Georgias, those type of schools. That's just my personal opinion.
And to answer your question, Jackson State doesn't play any Power Five schools. They play Campbell, which is a FCS school
Okay.
um, in North Carolina. But they're just keeping it strictly FCS.
Well, I mean, I'm a fan of that, but to be truthful, I'd have been, instead of playing maybe a team like Campbell, why not play like Howard or Hampton or that type of school, That's my personal opinion, because,
I agree.
I've been to some of these, just aside from the Bayou Classic, I've been to some of these classic games, I think the only one I really didn't go to was like a Circuit City Classic, but, maybe going, watch Southern play against, Alcorn State, going by Southern play against Alabama State, or even, a team like I remember when Hampton came to AW Memphis Stadium back in the day. Uh, they were number one in the MEAC. Southern was number one in the SWAC. Both teams were at the top of the Sheraton Bowl, like 1 and 2. I mean, that was like a real lit game. The bands. That's another thing too. People don't understand about SWAC culture and or just black college football in general when it comes to the bands. When you got a team that has an exceptional band like maybe like Howard's band or Hampton's band or FAMU, when those teams come to town, you know, it's back and forth the whole game. It's certain portions of the game where the referee has to tell both bands, you can't play while the offense is on the field. So that kind of adds like a different level of in terms of it being a great atmosphere when you have a SWAC team playing against another SWAC team or a SWAC team playing against a MEAC team. You know, you know, the atmosphere is that much bigger. So I don't think you're gonna get that same feel, playing against LSU next weekend. I mean, don't get me wrong. I went to the LSU game for the first time last year when they played against ULM because ULM played against J State the first game of the season last year, and it's a different atmosphere in Tiger Stadium as opposed to AW Memphis Stadium, but it's hard to replicate when you're playing against another HBCU and there's a good rivalry and you have two excellent bands. And I mean, that atmosphere is, to me, is second to none, especially, when you're playing in a game like the Bayou Classic or J State, especially when they play in Jackson. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great game. I don't think I'll ever go see Southern when they play in Jackson again because to me, they just old sell tickets. You got people sitting all in the aisle, you know. The stadium is literally packed to capacity. But like those type of atmospheres is I think what black college football is all about. That's what HBCU is all about. And I
Yes,
think
sir.
when athletes, I mean, don't get me wrong, you won't give yourself the best opportunity to make it to the league, but I think that's the experience they miss out on when they go to some of these Power Five schools.
Yeah. Because when I went to a couple of years back, when I went to the Texas State Fair game, Prairie View A&M versus Grambling, that's when
Yeah,
Devontae Kincaid was playing. Man, the atmosphere was amazing, man.
it was amazing. Yeah, it was the atmosphere, especially in the Bayou Classic. I mean, don't get me wrong. I wanted Southern to win, but just seeing the performance he put on in those three classics, him and Carter,
Martez Carter, yep.
Martez Carter. I'm not gonna lie, hey, you know, as a coach, I just kind of appreciate it just watching Kincaid and Carter go to work. And I'm gonna be honest with you, people don't realize like those years, Grambling offensive line was kind of mediocre, but the
Mediocre
fact
at
that
best, yeah.
yeah, but the fact that you had an elite quarterback and an elite running back, it just kind of made up for, you know, them having a mediocre offensive line.
Well, Devontae Kincaid did say in the interview that he played, he faced the Power Five, defenses before. So even though when he played at Grambling, he knew how to get the ball out. And if you remember, Williams, uh, and I forgot the other, they had some pretty damn good wide receivers.
Oh yeah. I'm not gonna lie, Doug Williams and Fob, people don't remember. I remember Project Fob as a player. He played for the legendary coach Eddie Robinson. He was the SWAC offensive player of the year as a fullback. So, he was a good coach and he really believed in recruiting that I-10 corridor, from New Orleans, as far as it could go, and he recruited, North Louisiana well, and he recruited Texas well. So, yeah, they believed in getting good wide receivers and good skill players, and that was shocking to me because that's one thing Grambling has been synonymous for is like having big, huge, country fed offensive linemen, and they had big offensive linemen, but they were just mediocre, But
Yeah,
the
they had
fact,
slow feet and
yeah, I mean, it was slow footed. They really couldn't get out of whether it was a 2 or 3 point stands, but the fact that you had in just a game breaker at elite SWAC quarterback and elite SWAC running back, it just made up for just mediocre offensive line play.
yeah, yes, sir. And then it's a crime that Devontae Kincaid isn't on the NFL roster right now. I think
And
it's one of the most. It's sad as far as um, NFL talent
and, and,
or scouting talent.
and I'm 100% in agreement with you. I really think he's an NFL caliber talent, but based on what I saw, back in the day with Charlie Ward, because people don't realize, even though Charlie Ward played in the NBA for years for the New York Knicks, he won a Heisman Trophy. He was a better quarterback. I mean, better quarterback for Florida State than he was a point guard as a basketball player. And if they did that to him, saying basically he was too short, I think, and don't get me wrong, shorter quarterbacks are more prevalent now than they were at one point. At one point, like Doug Flutie was the poster child for like, short quarterbacks. Now it's Drew Brees, even though he's retired. But the thing about it is, I knew they were going to the fact that he went to a swag school in Grambling, and the fact that he's like maybe 5'11", 6 feet tall, 6 feet tall at best. I knew they were going to use those two things against him, and he didn't really get a shot. But at least Carter did, and I think the thing that kind of hampered Martez Carter is the fact that I think he's fast enough. He's a good third down back in the day's game. But I think the thing that they kind of pointed to the fact that he wasn't maybe strong enough, or big enough, or whatever. Which I felt like he should be in the NFL also. But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, that's a little bit of old school history freak. The absolute Charlie Ward was. I remember um, him playing in the NBA, but I was like a little kid
Uh-huh.
during that time. But I do remember the old head saying how good Charlie Ward
Oh,
was.
Charlie Wall was a beast, and I think the thing people don't understand about today's game, cause see, back in the day, especially, I mean, I don't care if you in a swag or you went to a Power Five, like quarterbacks really didn't start until like their junior year. He didn't start to his junior year at Florida State. He sat for those 2 years because I think with today's day and age, the fact that you got kids that literally play football 24/7, 365, and you have all these 7-on-7 camps. Essentially, they know all the coverages, the defenses. They know if you're gonna play, man to man. But back in those days, especially in the early '90s, you had to learn coverages and do all of these things. They weren't gonna throw you out there as a true freshman, so you had to, you had to learn. And then he sat for 2 years, and then his junior year he was amazing, and then his senior year he won the Heisman Trophy. And instead of him making it to the NBA, I mean him making it to the NFL, the thing they said he was too short, and the fact that he was such an exceptional athlete, he was able to leverage him being a starting point guard at Florida State, and he became a first round draft pick. So since he really didn't need to, go to the CFL or go somewhere else to kind of prove his way the way like somebody like Warren Moon had to back in the day, he just went to the NBA and just said, well, I'm not gonna fight. They say I'm too short, and I'm just going to the NBA and be a starting point guard.
And I think that's why players like Devontae Kincaid didn't make it because of the height, but they had you got Russell Wilson, Drew Brees.
Yep.
Doug Flutie played, and he was like
Yeah,
5'9", 5'10". So
I'm
I think it's
they
an
got him listed
excuse.
at 5'9". I saw him on TV one day, standing next to like a couple other NFL players. I think Doug Flutie might be 5'8", maybe 5'9" at best.
Damn, really?
So, oh yeah, Doug Flutie is very short. I mean, but the thing about it is, the same way Russell Wilson is mobile and, he creates foreign windows with his size and that type of thing. Even you see Pat Mahomes do it to a certain degree in terms of side on the ball, that type of thing. Doug Flutie was doing all those things back in the day, you know what I'm saying? So, I kind of see how, he was able to get by. But people don't realize, he made it in the NFL initially, but Doug Flutie's best years as a professional quarterback, he played in the CFL. And then in the latter stage of his career, he came back to the NFL, and he was a good quarterback. And really, he should have been a starting quarterback of the Bills, but the Bills had two real good quarterbacks at the time, and he didn't get it in the long run. But most of Doug Flutie's best, he played in the CFL. He didn't play in the NFL. He started his career in the NFL. He ended his career in the NFL. But Doug Flutie is, he played most of his best years in the CFL.
Yeah, I do. Not remembering because that was before my time, but I'm just looking up his history and stuff. He did ball. I think I was watching about 30 for 30 about the USFL. I think called Small Potatoes about the USFL originally when it opened in the 80s, and he was balling out. So yeah, yes sir, yes
Yeah,
sir.
because he played in both the NFL, USFL, and the CFL. But like I was saying, I mean
Right.
he his most productive years, where he really could have been in NFL. The height thing is, like I said, he was 5'9" at best. He might be. I don't know if you remember. It's probably a little bit before your time. Something had this starting quarterback called Sam George. I don't know if you remember the movie Any Given Sunday with what his name is
Jamie Foxx.
yeah, Jamie Foxx. Well, Sam George, the starting quarterback from Southern, well, he had graduated by that point. His playing career was over. He was Jamie Foxx's stunt double, and him and Jamie Foxx in real life, he's about the same height. And I'll be willing to bet that Doug Flutie might be about the same height as Sam George, maybe an inch taller. That's why I see, the height thing is something that, like I said,
Hey, you got some little noise in the background, coach.
huh?
You got some noise in the background.
All right. No, let me see.
It's gone now.
All right. But like I was saying, in terms of Kincaid, I don't think it's the fact it's a height thing because, like you said, you have Breeze, you have Russell Wilson, not just Doug Flutie, but the fact that he played in the SWAC, I think that kind of hindered him also.
Yeah, that's for real, Jay Good. He said Sam was there when he was there.
Oh yeah, yeah. In fact, I'll be willing to bet. Yeah, they did play. In that same time frame. I mean, Sam George. I mean, he had a rocket on. I mean, he had strong arm. To see he was that short, he reminded me of this quarterback I played at Assumption with. I mean, he was short, but he had a strong arm. But yeah, Sam George was a beast.
And he played at Southern.
Yeah, Sam George. He was a strong quarterback at Southern. He should have played longer, but Southern had this real political thing. I know people like Jay Good and other people that I met at the meet and greet that went to Southern. They had this white quarterback called Marcus Jacoby. He was pretty mediocre, but he had such good talent around him. You know, it really kind of offset that. And you know, a lot of people back in those days they were saying, "Well, I think the reason why people knock Marcus Jacoby because he's white." I'm like, no, we not Marcus Jacoby. Marcus Jacoby was trash. I mean, because at the same time, LSU had this quarterback called Craig Nall, and he ended up transferring to Northwestern State. Had he transferred to Southern, I would have taken Craig Nall. So it wasn't a white or black thing. It was just he was trash thing. So yeah, but he should have played longer. But the fact that Jacoby started for a couple of years, I think Sam George only started like maybe a year, two or something.
I used to hear my dad talk about this quarterback. Um, he played in North Carolina Central, named Air Harvey.
Uh-huh.
His real name was Earl Harvey, but they called him Air Harvey. Um, they were saying he was, Pops and the other OL used to say he was really good, but he never really got a shot in the NFL either.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be truthful. You know, Charlotte Ward, he graduated like the year before Steve Air McNair did. And at that time, you know, it was kind of touch and go whether Steve Air McNair was gonna make it to the NFL. And if he, you know, he was content, like, hey, if I don't make it, I know I'm good enough. But, you know, he made it. He was more than good enough from a talent standpoint. So, you know, a lot of SWAC guys, a lot of even the height thing, you know, Doug Flutie was the only one that really got that shot because he won a Heisman Trophy. But a lot of guys that were his height that probably really was good enough in the NFL, they didn't get that shot. And, you know, like I say with Kincaid, you know, it was kind of like a double-edged sword, the fact that he was that height and he played in the SWAC. And, you know, with McNair probably could have went other schools and started had he played another position, but he was intent like, hey, I'm going to play quarterback, and I'm willing to go to a SWAC school and be the starting quarterback as opposed to going to a bigger Power 5 school and playing DB or wide receiver or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, I could see that, you know.
Yeah, they basically they did a lot of black quarterbacks wrong. I think now it's get to the point. A lot of black quarterbacks have been uh, they talent has been so unnoticeable. Where to the point where I mean noticeable. Excuse me, noticeable to the point where you can't ignore it. So
Yeah,
they
because
have no choice but to draft Lamar Jackson or Deshaun Watson. I know he's going through a lot of legal issues right now, but the boy can ball.
yeah, he can ball. And the thing about it is the way the game has evolved, uh, where you know you won't have as many athletes on the field as you could. I mean, just think about it from an NFL standpoint. You need to have somebody like Lamar Jackson because you got somebody like Aaron Donald playing defensive tackle. I mean, at one point, you know, when if you had just say you ran a 4-man front, you know, you want two athletic bookends and you want two huge, like nose guard type defensive tackles just to kind of eat up space and demand a double team. But in the biggest NFL, you got somebody like Aaron Donald, who really probably, you know, in his prime, he kind of remind me of a prime John Randall. You know, he might be before your time. He was a defensive tackle for the Minnesota Vikings, but he could play both defensive end and defensive tackle. But I mean, you got those type of athletes are more prevalent today. So you need a more athletic quarterback. That's why you see some of these guys, so many of these guys nowadays that, you know, probably could run, you know, sub 4.6, sub 4.5 in the 40. You know, these guys, you know, you need more athletes like that quarterback and on the offense side of the ball because you got guys like Aaron Donald playing, you know, defensive tackle in the NFL. So you need, you know, athletic quarterbacks that's through threat. That's, you know, you don't want to just have just this pocket pass unless he can really get rid of the ball quickly, like maybe like a Brady type. You know, you want these dual threat guys like a Pat Mahomes, like a Russell Wilson, you know, those type of guys. So in years past, like probably about 30 years ago, Russell Wilson would have never got a shot at quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I've heard, and I'm even with Lamar Jackson, he's doing his thing, got an MVP under his belt. Um, uh,
Oh, yeah, no
he's
doubt. 34. I don't mean to cut you off, bro, but
go ahead.
34, 40 years ago, Lamar Jackson would have been a wide receiver in the NFL. You know, it really was. It wasn't until like you had just a phenom athlete play quarterback like Mike Vick.
Right.
until Mike Vick really emerged. Like a lot of those guys, they were just taking them and sticking them in skilled spots, So that's why somebody like a Steve McNair, he really had to be adamant. Hey, I'm playing quarterback because I talked about Doug Flutie playing in the CFL. People don't realize Warren Moon played in the CFL for a few years before he really earned his NFL spot, even though he really was good enough to play in the NFL from the beginning. So when they talk about the all-time leading passer like Dan Marino, people don't really realize if you take in consideration Warren Moon's CFL like yardage, he probably has more like total yards than somebody like Dan Marino. So, but these are things that they don't talk about in history books. You don't really put a asterisk by that because somebody like Warren Moon had been at CFL for a few years. So
Yeah. I did hear about Warren Moon being going, have to play in the CFL for a
yeah,
couple of years until finally being signed with the Houston Oilers
Houston
back
Oilers.
then.
Yeah, it was the Oilers back then. Yeah.
And he played along with Earl Campbell, right, for a couple of
No,
years, right?
no. Earl Campbell. That was before Warren Moon.
That was before Warren Moon. Okay.
Yeah, that was before Warren Moon. And then when Warren Moon came to the Oilers, they ran like this. Everybody runs spread nowadays, but the spread wasn't as prevalent back then. They ran something called a run and shoot off offense where he was under center. He had some good wide receivers. Hayward Jeffries, Ernest Givens, guys you probably never heard of, but they had a double slot on each side. He had a single back set, power back, Lorenzo White. Weirdest game back in the day. All the kids nowadays they play man with this game called Tecmo Bowl, and you know, if you had the NES back in those days, Nintendo Entertainment System, that was one of the teams I used to like to play with. But they didn't. They had a spread offense. It was, like a running. They used to call it the running shoot, where you know, Moon was under center, Lorenzo White with the power back, Ernest Givens in the slot on one side, Hayward Jeffries on the slot on the other side, double slot. And it was like, you know, the way Southern run these race horse offense now, it's the same thing, no different. It was under center. And you're just trying to get the ball out, like maybe 5 yard curl, 5 yard slant, 5 yard out. Just in some instances, the receivers might run all of them might run the same route. Or they might have route combinations to kind of break down the coverage, whatever the case may be. But it was a different day in time. It seemed like on all levels, everybody wanted to run spread. But back in the day, you might have maybe a handful of team that ran a spread offense. You know, uh, Jerry Glanville with the Houston Oilers. A few coaches, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is nowadays.
Yeah. Uh, Jay Good made a good point. He said option style quarterbacks never were allowed the opportunity to excel on the next level. Tommy Frazier, J.J. Joe, Tony Rice, and etc. Cordell Stewart was an exception.
Yeah. Cordell Stewart, he was the anomaly out of that group. Because I'm not gonna lie, Tommy Frazier was a beast in Nebraska. I mean, he was somebody that really should have got a shot in the NFL. And to be truthful, even Jay Good made an excellent point, and really even before that time, at one point, one of my coworkers, he played at Oklahoma for Barry Switzer. At one point, they didn't even want black quarterbacks to be option quarterbacks because they said black quarterbacks didn't have the mental capacity to make those type of decisions on the fly. And I'm like, man, are you crazy?
And
So
it's happening that that's what they're trying to say with players like Lamar Jackson. He threw a couple of interceptions last year, but they're want to erase all the touchdowns he made. And he's been throwing darts, making good throws. So it's, I mean,
I know. I mean, he
damn if
showed.
you
I mean,
do,
that's the thing
damn if you
about it.
don't.
I mean, to cut you off, bro.
You
Yeah, and I
could,
mean that's the thing about it. Even with that being said, they got rid of Hollywood Brown. It's like, you know, I mean, I know he's an exceptional athlete, but you have to give him weapons to work with also. So, because I mean, even Vic in his day,
right?
he was an exceptional athlete and he had a strong arm. But the thing was, well, hey, he's not that accurate, so we're just gonna have him, throw the ball to Algie Crumpler or Warwick Dunn in the flats all the time. I'm like, man, he has a strong arm. Like, get him weapons. So, I mean, if he don't succeed, then you could say, well, hey, he's not that accurate. But you have to give him out every opportunity to be, successful. And that's the thing people don't understand about coaching. Essentially, you just want to put your players in a best situation to be successful. If you gotta like even last night when unless you played against Florida State, the Butte is such a great receiver. Just give him the opportunity to touch the ball as many times as he could, whether it's tunnel screens, bubble screens, you know, option routes, whatever. You get him the ball as much as you could get in the ball. So that's the thing about it. You want to give your athletes every chance to be successful, and that's the thing that the Ravens should do. They should put Lamar Jackson in situation where he's going to be successful.
I agree. Me being a Baltimore Ravens fan, uh, I feel like a lot of the play calling Greg Roman has allowed, it's like very. I mean, you being a middle school coach, I believe especially the wide receiver routes, you could do better than that, coach.
Oh
It's,
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
very
Without question.
it's very vanilla, like you said.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I ain't gonna lie. And like I said, one of my coaching friends used to bring this point up all the time. It's one thing that's really been prevalent at LSU. They really didn't push the issue on it. Nah, but I'm certain at some point, if there's a good quarterback behind Jaden Daniels, or especially a good white quarterback, they're gonna want the white quarterback to play over him. Because it's you know, when it comes to all the other positions, they don't care. But I think at LSU over the years, years and years you go back. I don't care whether it's Rohan Davey and Josh Booty, whoever. They always want the white quarterback to be the starting quarterback, whether it's you know George Jefferson and I forgot the kid name, but they want the
Uh
white.
oh,
They want
coach, don't
black.
start nothing.
Well, I'm just being truthful. Some of these
Hey, I
Power
want to hear
Five
that.
schools, some of these Power Five schools, they want the black athlete, but they don't want the black quarterback. And even in the NFL, I think in certain instances they call certain plays for certain quarterbacks, and they call other plays for other quarterbacks. So I think you know with with Lamar Jackson, they call certain plays that they probably wouldn't call if somebody else was the starting quarterback. You know what I'm saying? So like I say, I don't think they give him every situation to be. They don't put him in situation where he's going to be successful. They try to limit him, and I'm like, bro, he's an exceptional athlete, but you gotta you gotta call the plays that you would call for this. If I'm a mobile quarterback and you're a pocket passer, yeah, in certain instances you're gonna call plays for you that you don't call for me, and vice versa. But if you're trying to get the first down, if it's 3rd and 5, you can't just say, well, hey, we're gonna run read option or we're gonna run zone read with me because I'm an athletic quarterback. If you're gonna throw the ball to get the first down, if that's won't get the first down, let's get the first down. You know, let's not, play this, hey, we're gonna have one offense for you and one offense for him, So that's just my take on it. Because, middle school is different. You just take your best athlete and put him at running back and you just give him the ball as much as you could. But there are instances where I have a more athletic quarterback and I have more of a pocket passer. But guess what? The offense doesn't change because one quarterback is in the game as opposed to others. I mean, in certain instances, I'm gonna call one play for me and I'm gonna call a different play for you because our skill sets are different. But at the end of the
Right.
day, the overall goal is to be successful. And I think a lot of these coaches they lose sight of that. So that's one thing he used to make. Like, hey, if LSU had this white quarterback and this black quarterback, the white quarterback they're gonna call a certain offense and they're gonna call the other offense for this kid here. So it's like, nah, bro, you just want to be successful.
I feel like they did the same thing to Cam Newton. If you remember that team he took to Super Bowl, they had an old Jericho Cotchery. I think they may had Ted again, but he was broke up.
Yeah,
Offensive line was mediocre.
Ten is better than this. Yeah,
So
but and
they,
I think the thing about it is, I don't mean to cut you off there, but
no, you good.
when you got Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, because see, leading up to that run, uh, I mean, even when the Saints gave him problems, you got a couple of athletes, you got Cam Jordan, you got whoever, on the defensive line, it makes a difference. So in that Super Bowl run, when they played against some of these teams they played against, his athleticism is kind of what won a lot of those games. But when you get the biggest stage of them all, and you got two bookends like Ware and Miller on each side, it's hard for you to just say from a coaching standpoint, well, we just gonna let Cam just out athlete us, and like you said, the offensive line was mediocre, especially when you got two dogs at defensive end like that. Even though Von Miller, I really kind of feel like it's more of a Jordan Lewis type, really not a defensive end, but more of a outside linebacker in the 3-4 as opposed to a defensive end in the 4-3. But even with that being said, he's an exceptional athlete. At least at that time there, I think this version of him now, he's kind of seen his better days also. But even with that being said, I really think that, they should have found ways to kind of help the offense be successful. Like you said, he didn't have a whole lot of weapons to work with. Ted Ginn had seen his better days. The offensive line was trash. Jericho Cotchery, So he really didn't have a
Right.
whole lot to work. So
Yeah, and it's just you see the brilliance in these quarterbacks as far as their talent, and you just being a fan, just watching it, and you're like, how come they just can't get the weapons or the line around them? Just go ahead and, but it's sometimes you hate to play the race card, but I mean,
yeah, I mean it's true. It's true, 100% true. I think from an NFL standpoint, those components are a little bit different because in the NFL, you have a salary cap. So if especially Cam Newton at the time, he a franchise quarterback. From a in terms of your salary cap, he's gonna eat up a lot of that salary
right.
cap. So it might be hard to get him like all the best offensive linemen an elite caliber defense. So that's understandable and it's different. But the circumstances might be different. Years ago when you had at LSU where you had Josh Booty and you had Rohan Davey, it's like man, it's clear, like Rohan Davey was clearly a better quarterback. Rohan Davey didn't win the NFL. I mean, he wasn't a starter. He was a backup. But even with that being said, I mean, he was clearly the better option. But when you want to push a certain narrative or a certain agenda, you kind of do what you do, and that's why I love the LDBC, and everybody talk about hey, LDBC, they push agenda, blah 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 blah. That's bull crap because guess what? ESPN they do the same thing. When you got a fighter like
They
Devin
sure do.
Haney, that's clearly a top 10, maybe even top 5 pound for pound fighter. And he's not even on the pound for pound list, and he fights on ESPN. But you got somebody like Loma that's on the list, and he got 2 unavenged losses. Like, come on, man. Like, so if we going by that, everybody trying to push an agenda. Everybody has an agenda that they're trying to push. So you can
It's
miss it
just
with
that
that.
when we stick to our guns and support our own, whatever sport, it doesn't matter what sport, it could be football, boxing, whatever. Seems like the people who have a problem with it, they the first ones that complain about it.
Yeah,
And
it's crazy. It's crazy how when they do it, it's cool, but when it's black support black, oh, that's racism. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's why Mike Tyson years ago he had this phrase. A reporter told him he was he was a racist because he was anti-white. He was like, no, I'm not anti-white. I'm pro-black. And, there's a difference. There's a difference between anti-white and being pro-black. So he just said he was pro-black. So I say, we our own community. We love each other. We support our own. You know what I'm saying? So what's wrong with that?
nothing wrong with it at all because
At
everybody else
all.
do it.
Yeah, yeah. So support your own. You know what I'm saying?
It's that black unity that the older I get, the more that I realize um, a lot of people, other races have um, are intimidated by black unity.
I mean, it is. I mean, that's the thing that people don't realize that it's a race here to take us to a whole nother level. And you know, I was listening to this guy. I can't remember his name. He's he's heavy into politics, but he was saying that Dr. King was from bad. He was saying that was one of his regrets that he really pushed integration. But when he pushed integration, like the black community is splintered. He
You
really
breaking
wish
up
he
a
would
little
have.
bit, Coach.
See, bro. Hello.
Yeah, okay. You fine.
All right, but anyway, he was saying that he wished he would have put more the economic component as opposed to integration, because integration it kind of separated the black community in terms of, from a black standpoint, they had all their own, like, whether it was black buses, black whatever, all their own, all our own in terms of community. Whereas after integration, now that black dollar, it left our community, So he was saying that he really wish he'd push the economic component of it, and when he really focused on, you know, economics, that's when he needed to be assassinated, So.
Yeah. Yes, sir. So I mean, we see it in everyday lives, but it's funny that people can't see it in sports because don't get me wrong, we've met some cool white guys, cool um Hispanic guys, just by playing sports. You know what I mean? But that racial element is still there,
Yeah,
even when
and
you try to get away from it. It's still
yeah,
there.
yeah, and that's the crazy thing about it. When I played football at Assumption, like some of my best friends on the team were white. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah,
if you look in the stands during the game, all the black fans sitting kind of like on one side, and all the white fans sitting on another side, and then they were like maybe this area where they might intermingle a little bit. For the most part, that's what it was. And years back, my dad used to see what you saying. My dad used to tell me this all the time. I don't know if you know Chris Collinsworth, but before he really became a real prominent broadcaster, he used to call SWAC games. He used to call it Bayou Classic, and him and other broadcasters. Like, I'm gonna give you an example, right? I don't know if you know Brett Favre, but Brett Favre was like, he considered to be like one of the best quarterbacks ever
yeah, I
walked.
know about Brett Favre.
Well,
Southern
anyway,
Miss.
anyway, I remember this one game, and this used to happen all the time. I used to notice this even when I was a kid. White people, when you have that white privilege, you don't notice things because you don't see it from a black perspective or from a black lens. But it used to be prevalent, when watching these NFL games, black quarterback drop back to pass, he throwing double coverage. Oh, that's a stupid decision. That's stupid. Da, 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 da. And then Brett Favre, he'll drop back, turn around, throwing a quadruple coverage, but he completes the pass. Brett Favre is a gunslinger. What a great pass. And I'm like, hold up. When the black quarterback threw in the double coverage, you said it was stupid. He threw in a quadruple coverage, and he's a gunslinger. And, that's one thing I noticed over the years, especially when I used to watch HBO boxing. I used to hate HBO boxing because Jim Lampley and Larry Merch, and they would get on here, and some of these same guys that used to announce fights with them, like Roy Jones Jr., whoever, some of these
I
same
know what
black
you're
guys.
going into. Drew
Yeah,
Titan and Stormy was talking about it last night.
I,
This last night,
it,
yeah.
it's yeah. I mean, all right, Floyd Mayweather. He getting even though I don't like him outside the ring, but as a talent, you can't deny him in the ring. He'll be boxing. Oh, this is boring. Especially Larry Merch. Larry Merch used to make me sick. He would be boxing, and he's slipping punches and counter punching, shoulder rolling counter, and he putting on a masterclass performance. And Larry Merchant complain, oh, he's boring. This is boring, right? Oscar De La Hoya do the same thing. Man, this is beautiful boxing. I'm thinking to myself, bro, and I don't care what game I'm watching, what at that time what sport I was watching, whether it was boxing, whether it's NFL, you notice the double standard. Black
Yeah.
quarterback on the double coverage is a stupid decision. Brett Favre on a quadruple coverage. Oh, he's a gunslinger. So I'm like, bro, like, and like I said, in many instances, I had this white friend that I played ball with. He didn't even notice these type of things. I'm like, you know why? Because you're black. You don't see it from a black perspective. And I noticed that my whole life watching sports. HBO boxing. That's why I was so happy when they ended up just, shutting down their boxing division, because it was just so biased with Larry Merchant and Jim Lampley. And some of these same guys, like literally they were friends with like Bernard Hopkins and Roy Jones Jr. They when they would call those guys fights, they're basically trashing them. But yet you my friend. So I'm like, so
Jay Good got a point. He said Romo had that moniker also.
Oh yeah, yeah, he was another one. You know, I mean, these guys would make terrible decisions. They were throwing a double and triple coverage all the time. The black quarterback throwing a double coverage. Oh, that's a stupid decision. What was he thinking? Where was his mind? Blah 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 blah. Then a white quarterback was throwing a triple coverage. Oh, he's a gunslinger. I'm like, are we watching the same game? You know, so you know, and I know 7-8. You know, he was he a Packers fan, but that's when I used to hate about Brett Favre. Brett Favre would do stuff that if a black quarterback done it, they would crucify him. But you know, since he was Brett Favre and he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, he could throw in a quadruple coverage and get away with it. But black quarterback came throwing double coverage, you know, without it being a big deal, you know. So
Picasso, I can believe it, man. I can believe it. That's what they do. Um, and that's one of the reasons why Devontae Kincaid transfer. Not the main reason because his mom had got sick, but they had brought in
yeah,
that quarterback. Was it? I think it was Bo Wallace,
I
or it
think
was
it
an.
was.
And I guess it got to the point where why would you bring him in? You got coming out of high school, I was like one of the top quarterbacks coming out of Texas, like
And,
four
and,
star. You know, so it's
and that's the crazy thing about it because you know even if you look at somebody like Russell Wilson, when Russell Wilson was at NC State, you know he was the man, and I can't think of the guy. He ended up being a starting quarterback for the Bucks for a little while. So when Russell Wilson was a senior, I mean when he was a junior, essentially they told him like, hey, you're not gonna be the starting quarterback next year. You need to transfer. So he ended up transferring to Wisconsin,
yeah,
and this guy, I can't think of his name. He ended up being a starting quarterback, and he was just he was decent, and then he ended up making it to the NFL. Russell Wilson ended up becoming a Super Bowl winning quarterback. You know, if Pete Carroll and his coaching staff wouldn't have made a stupid decision, he'd have won 2 Super Bowls. But this guy here, you pushing it at North Carolina State, you know, over Russell Wilson. You know, he didn't even become a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback in the NFL. So in a lot of instances, these coaches they make these decisions. It's based whether they want to acknowledge it or not. It's based on race. It's not based on talent because, like I said, there was no way Russell Wilson shouldn't have, finished his career as a college quarterback at North Carolina State as opposed to transferring to Wisconsin. And in fact, him transferring to Wisconsin probably was the best thing for him because it showed, hey, I could go to another team, I could lead him to Big Ten championship game instead of the third. So it helped him in the long run. But
yeah,
race plays a major role in a lot of these decisions. Race or politics, either or.
yes sir, yes sir, it does. And we're gonna talk a little about NFL, and we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. Um, as far as I know, it's football hasn't even NFL hasn't even started yet. But which team is in? I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan, so I'm not gonna be biased. Which team is impressing you going into the season?
Well, I mean, I was telling one of my coaching friends this. Preseason really doesn't move me. I don't even watch a whole lot of preseason games. I'm a huge Saints fan, and I only watched this last preseason game to kind of see if Michael Thomas was going to be healthy, if James Winston was going to be healthy. So I really don't put a lot of stock in the preseason. But in terms of like my early, teams I'm kind of watching, I know it's kind of like, the popular pick, but I want to see what the Kansas City Chiefs are going to do, with Pat Mahomes, since they ended up getting rid of Tyreek Hill. Uh, I'll probably see out of AFC, either the Chiefs or the Bengals or the Bills.
You took my
Those,
team, the Chiefs. Yeah,
yeah, those three teams are really kind of the teams I kind of have my eye on. In terms of the NFC, I think it's a little bit more wide open. I think a lot of teams, a lot of people putting a lot of stock in the Bucks, but with Tom Brady's, potentially, the situation he has with his wife, maybe she's potentially leaving him. I think that may affect him. The Packers, I think they kind of a team to watch, but over the years, their defenses haven't been too good. And even though Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback, in certain situations, he really doesn't come through in the clutch. So I think the NFC is a little bit more wide open than the AFC. But the fact that you have like three young franchise caliber quarterbacks with Mahomes, with the kid from the Bills, Allen, with Mahomes, Allen, and of course, with my friend from LSU winning the national championship. Those three, I think, those three teams are kind of like the cream of the crop in the AFC. Now, it's no guarantee that one of those three gonna make it to the Super Bowl, but if I was a betting person, I'll put my money on one of those three coming out the AFC. The NFC is it's a little bit more wide open, at least in my
Yeah, I
opinion.
definitely agree. I'm loving the cheese. I love their draft picks. I like them picking my favorite state Joshua Williams,
Uh-huh.
cornerback. He was out of all the FCS talent that were drafted, he impressed everybody on the draft board, being 6'3", being athletic, and they boasted that cornerback squad. So I'm loving the cheese, man. I hate to say it, but the cheese, and they drafted. They didn't draft. They picked up that. Why I'm blanking on his name. That wide receiver from Clemson that nobody wanted because of his condition.
Oh yeah. I can't think his name, but I know who you're talking about. I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
If this boy makes it on the field, everybody might be in trouble. And you know how football people might be a bust, but just if you go back and look at his film, he's a baller, man. He's a baller, and Mahomes don't need no more weapons at all.
Well, and I think that's the thing what they really was banking on because they probably knew from a salary cap standpoint they weren't going to be able to, afford Tyreek Hill. At some point, they was going to have to probably part ways with him because, it's not like the NBA where the NBA has a soft cap. You can go over the cap and go into the luxury tax. NFL, you have a hard cap. So it's going to kind of be hard to have a franchise quarterback and all of these multiple weapons around him. So maybe Travis Kelce, maybe he's cheaper. Maybe Tyreek Hill was probably a better option and he wanted to get paid. So, I
That's
think
his
that's really
name,
about it.
Justin Ross.
Oh, yeah. So that's that's probably why they took a gamble with him.
Yeah, they're definitely gonna the cheese definitely a team you have to look out for. But of course, I'm going with my Ravens. But things happen. Lamar still hasn't been signed. But I think he
Yeah,
ain't going nowhere.
I mean, I don't think he gonna hold out, but I'm gonna be truthful. In years past, quarterbacks. I mean, any player like this, with his talent, you NFL, you don't have fully guaranteed contracts. So those guys, they hold out till they get it, they deal done. Because just imagine, I'm not really, I don't really want to put this in the atmosphere, but just say hypothetically he get hurt, and what? Because the same thing happened to Dak, last year, or year before last. So, you don't want to take that kind of chance. You want to be certain that you have your contract in place and you have a certain amount of guaranteed money. And then on top of that, like I mentioned earlier, they got rid of Hollywood Brown. So it's like, you know,
We need a wide receiver like Anquan Bolton, who's a position wide receiver who can, uh, you know, uh, catch it in the middle. Bully the cornerback. Kind of like I think we may have him on the roster. Uh, he's a tight end, but he plays like a um, wide receiver. His name is Isaiah Likely. We drafted him from Coastal Carolina.
yeah, and that's one thing, when I brought up Vic earlier, that's really was the thing that they really did. They they featured Algie Crumpler a lot because he was extremely athletic and he had a big arm, but they wanted somebody to kind of go over the middle and a good safety outlet. So I'm surprised the Ravens really didn't get that. And then of course in the day and age where back in those days if you were a tight end you played with your hand in the dirt in the box, whereas
Right.
nowadays a lot of teams flex their tight ends out wide, like Travis Kelce, even the Saints at one point they had Jimmy Graham. So even Gronk, as big as Gronk is, you know the Patriots to flex Gronk out wide. Even with the Bucks, they flex Gronk out wide. So I'm surprised they didn't get Lamar Jackson, a wide receiver, tight end hybrid, even just a big tight end that really can be a big target that kind of go over the middle and get those yards, like maybe like a Anquan Bolden type, or even a Algie Crumpler type, a big body that could be a position receiver that keep the chains moving for him, as opposed
Yeah,
to relying on him
I agree.
running all the time because just like Cam Newton, yeah, I think later on in Action Jackson's career, it's gonna catch up to him in terms of him taking all these hits. So you won't put him in the best situation where you got a good back you can hand the ball off to, and keep the chains moving, or even a big body that could go over the middle and take these make these big catches and tough catches.
I definitely agree. That's definitely what we need. Um, but ladies and gentlemen, football season has started. Uh, I'm happy to see football is playing. We've been anticipating this moment for the whole year. It's here now. It's here now. So you guys stay tuned. Me and this brother, Coach, we met at the LDBC meet and greet. So we decided
Sir.
to team up and let's do the damn thing, man. So it's not perfect, but we just gonna ride this out, see where it take us.
Yeah, we
Um,
leveling up, baby, leveling up.
so we appreciate all y'all brothers for coming in here. Even though it's not much, I still appreciate love y'all. Um, just like I said, stay tuned. We gonna have more content. Try to have more content. I appreciate all you guys. Appreciate 78. Jay Good, Picasso. Love all you guys, man. Junior the
Trill
Truth,
Will, all the
Trill
brothers,
Will,
Trill Will, yeah, yeah. BF,
uh, BF Black, CC. All you guys gave us the motivation to do this. So, like I said, it's not perfect. We trying to figure everything out, but
we leveling
um,
up, baby.
yeah, we like Coach said, we leveling it up. So God bless you guys. Y'all be safe. Um, y'all could have done anything else on on this Labor day off, but y'all y'all stayed in here and listened to us ramble on about football. So I appreciate y'all. God bless y'all. Y'all stay safe. Y'all stay safe.
Y'all have a blessed and phenomenal evening. Salute to the mighty and amazing LDBC. Again, y'all follow me too on Coach 67 Sports TV. I uploaded some my pre-game analysis of the Florida Memorial game with Southern, post-game analysis. So we leveling up. We trying to make the thing happen. We appreciate everybody coming in here and showing us love. So we'll catch y'all on the rebound. Y'all have a blessed evening. Y'all have a great work week, and we'll catch y'all on the rebound.
All right, thank you, female boxing fan. One appreciate you can go back and watch it. But thank you for coming. But we're gonna wrap it up. Y'all have a good day.
Y'all peace. Have a phenomenal week, y'all.